Yes, let's talk about hockey. The show that journeys through the history of the sport of ice hockey from its disputed origins to the game we see today. After the success of the Great Expansion in 1967, the NHL looked to continue their growth as well as block the expansion efforts of their rival league, the WHA, in the 1970s. The first of these new expansion classes came in the 1970-71 season and featured the team that restored pro hockey to Western Canada, the Vancouver Canucks. After the WCHL's Vancouver Maroons disbanded following the 1925-1926 season, Vancouver would be home to only minor league teams for a number of years. Most notably was the Vancouver Canucks, who began play for the Pacific Coast Hockey League in 1945 before the merger of their league and the Western Canada Senior Hockey League formed the Western Hockey League in 1952. Utilizing as their logo a lumberjack rendition of Johnny Canuck, the 1869 political cartoon character that was reinvented into a World War II cartoon action hero in 1942, this Vancouver team captured the PCHL championship in their inaugural year in 1946, and again in 1948, then later claimed the WHL crown in 1958 and 1960. When the NHL looked to expand to 12 teams in 1967, a group led by Canucks owner Fred Hume made a bid to be one of the 6 new teams to join the league. Unfortunately, this bid was rejected, either due to a weak proposal or to the Toronto and Montreal owners not wishing to split the Canadian broadcasting revenue 3 ways. However, less than a year after the NHL's expansion, an apparent deal was in place to move the financially troubled Oakland Seals club to Vancouver. But the NHL blocked that deal since it didn't want one of its young franchises uprooted so quickly. So as to avoid a lawsuit, the NHL then promised Vancouver a team in their next expansion. Finally, in 1970, the Vancouver Canucks, under new ownership and coming off of back-to-back WHL championships, entered the NHL along with the Buffalo Sabres for the 1970-71 season, with both teams being placed in the East Division. Since they would be entering a new league, the team took on a new look. The Canucks logo was rebranded into a stylized C designed as a hockey stick inside a rink, incorporating the colors of blue, green, and white to represent the water, forests, and snow surrounding Vancouver. While a portion of the WHL Canucks roster was retained, the rest of the club was built through an expansion draft, where Vancouver acquired players like center Orland Kurtenbach, who would be named team captain, and defenseman Pat Quinn. With everything set, the Canucks played their first game as an NHL franchise on October 9, 1970 at their home arena, the Pacific Coliseum. Unfortunately, this game would end in a 3-1 loss to the Los Angeles Kings. However, Vancouver would tally their first win in their next game, downing the Maple Leafs by a score of 5-3. Despite being in a division that held 5 of the original 6 clubs, Vancouver maintained a spot within playoff contention during the first few months of the season. However, following a knee injury to team captain Orland Kurtenbach in December, the Canucks' placement in the standings fell. By the end of the year, despite boasting 6 20-goal scorers and rookie defenseman Dale Talon breaking Bobby Orr's rookie record for defenseman assists, Vancouver finished just 1 point ahead of dead last in their division. The Canucks' struggles would continue over the next 3 seasons, as the team finished in last place in their division each year. Prior to the 1974-75 season, though, continued expansion by the NHL realigned Vancouver into the new Smythe Division. This seemed to be the change that the club needed, as they posted their first winning record, going 38-32-10 to finish in the top spot in their division and earning their first ever playoff berth. In the quarterfinals, they were paired against the Norris Division champion Montreal Canadiens. Vancouver was dominated by Montreal in Game 1 by a score of 6-2, and though the Canucks evened the series with a Game 2 victory, the Canadiens took the next 3 contests to knock off Vancouver in 5 games. For the 1975-76 season, the Canucks finished ranked second in their division to make it to the playoffs once again. This time, though, their appearance in the postseason would be even shorter, as they were swept in 2 games by the New York Islanders during the preliminary round. Following their defeat at the hands of the Islanders, the next 5 seasons Vancouver would fail to post a winning record, missing the playoffs in the first 2 years of this stretch of time, and then suffering preliminary round defeats over the next 3 years. During this time, the Canucks altered their look, changing the team colors to yellow, red, orange, and black, changing their logo to one of a flying skate, and donning new uniforms with a huge striped V coming down from the shoulders. The intent was for a more aggressive image, but today it is considered by many to be the ugliest uniform to ever grace the NHL. Looks aside, Vancouver also began to put together a new set of core players during these tumultuous years, consisting of players like center Thomas Gradin, winger Stan Smyl, and goaltender Richard Brodeur. In the 1981-82 season, the Canucks again finished short of a winning record. However, their ranking was still good enough to earn the 2nd spot in the Smythe Division for a 4th consecutive berth in the playoffs. Vancouver also ran into a hurdle a few games before the regular season ended, when their head coach Harry Neale was suspended for taking part in an altercation with fans during a brawl in Quebec. In his place for the playoffs stepped an assistant coach by the name of Roger Nielsen. Under Nielsen, Vancouver would win their first ever playoff series, sweeping the Calgary Flames in 3 games to advance them to the Smythe Division Finals to face the LA Kings. After this first-round performance, Harry Neale, fresh off his suspension, convinced the team's managers to keep Nielsen as the head coach for the remainder of the playoffs. With Nielsen still at the helm, the Canucks made quick work of the Kings, bumping them off in 5 games for the Smythe Division crown. Moving on to the conference finals, Vancouver would claim a Game 1 overtime victory over Chicago. But in Game 2, things turned in Chicago's favor. The questionable officiating during this game got to the point that after Chicago netted a goal on their 4th straight power play to go up 4-1, Roger Nielsen held up a white towel on the end of a hockey stick in mock surrender to protest the referee's calls. Nielsen and 3 players were ejected from the game after this stunt, and the franchise, as well as Nielsen himself, were fined by the league. The towel-waving incident, though, would become a rallying point for the Canucks, and with their fans waving towels in support, the club would take the next 2 games at home, before finishing off the Blackhawks in Game 5 by a score of 6-2 to claim the Campbell Conference Championship. Appearing in the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time, Vancouver faced the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions, the New York Islanders. The Canucks would take Game 1 to overtime, but failed to pull off a win. After that, the Islanders took the next 3 games to end Vancouver's Cinderella run in a 4-game sweep. Since that first unexpected playoff run, Vancouver has made it to the Stanley Cup Finals 2 more times over the years, falling only 1 win shy of a Stanley Cup title both times. But who knows when that right combination will emerge to finally raise the Canucks to the level of Stanley Cup champions.